You don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Dead up perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 7th part of What If Deku Enters Hazbin Hotel. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of MaxX69 on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The remaining weeks from Izuku's last junior high school year had flown by at a relatively fast pace, each week passing by one after another. And before our young overlord knew it, it was already the beginning of April, thus the time when the first high school year of our protagonist would begin. On the weekend before the first day would have arrived, which was a Monday, to be exact, and before Izuku would have gone back to his home and to his mother. His demonic relatives, friends, and teacher told him once again how proud of him they were for getting into his dream school, and advised him that despite Bakugo probably being enrolled there, he should try to enjoy this time of his life, with Charlie even telling her young Cambion friend to try to make more and new friends, which every other resident of the Hazbin Hotel agreed with. After Izuku thanked the kindness of his demonic family members, friends, and inventor teacher, which he was really grateful for, he opened the portal with his voodoo book, and with Shadow by his side, he stepped inside the portal and went back to the realm of mortals, disappearing from the sight of the members of the main cast. Once he exited the portal and found himself inside his room, with the portal closing behind him after he and his shadowy friend got out of it. Izuku put his voodoo book back in its place on the shelf, took off his clothes, which he placed into his wardrobe, got himself into a regular attire, went out of his room, with his shadowy helper accompanying him in this act, stepped inside the living room kitchen where his mother was about to finish the preparation of their dinner, which was katsudon, consumed his dinner, took a shower, went back inside his room, dressed himself up with his pajamas, got into his bed, covered his body with his blanket, and fell asleep as Shadow changed into his shadow form and guarded him in his sleep. With our dear hero entering the world of dreams with the hope that his first day of high school won't turn out to be a disaster. And then, at last, the day arrived. The day when Izuku would truly begin his studies in his country's #1 ranked hero academy and would start his journey to make his dream come true and become a hero. And because of this, our protagonist couldn't allow himself to show disrespect or perform any kind of act that would make him seen as someone who didn't care about the rules of the school and about the fact that was going to learn in Yuha High, such as getting late. And in order to avoid this, he had to do his morning activities in a different way. On the morning of his first day, our dear hero awoke from his sleep a little bit earlier than usual, jumping out of his bed and exiting his room, with his shadowy companion closing the door of the room after both of them were out of it, and beginning his way in the direction of the living room kitchen of their apartment. All the while Shadow attempted to follow him in the process. Once he reached the living room kitchen and saw his mother inside, who observed him with a kind, motherly smile, Izuku descended on one of the chairs, sat at the table, and began to eat his breakfast, sharing the same act with his mother who was having a seat in front of him at the other side of the furniture. After he finished his meal and remercied his mother for making it, Izuku stood from the table, went inside the bathroom, took a morning shower to fully wake himself up, brushed the sharp, pointy teeth in his mouth, then walked back inside his room, took his pajamas off, and proceeded to position his Yuha High School uniform, which he and his mother acquired 1 week earlier, on his body for the first time in his life. His uniform consisted of a light gray blazer with dark turquoise trimmings, which under he wore a white dress shirt and dress pants, occupying the same color as the blazer. Once he got the blazer and the dress pants on his body, with the latter being made to allow his fluffy deer tail to be outside and be visible to everyone, our young overlord attempted to do up the red tie that was also a part of his attire, but found it difficult to perform it properly. Seeing his master struggle, Shadow decided to lend a hand to Izuku, extending both of his hands towards him and tying his tie perfectly, just how it would be supposed to look. After thanking his shadowy helper for his kind gesture, he grabbed his yellow-colored backpack and backed everything he needed for the day into it, which included a few pencils, an eraser, and a few notebooks. Then, he put his backpack on his back, approached the door of his room, opened it, and exited his room, with his shadowy friend locking the door behind his back. Once both of them were outside the room, our protagonist headed to the front door of the apartment, where his mother was already waiting for him, and attempted to put his signature red shoes on, adding them to his attire as the last piece of clothing. As he crouched down and started to tie the laces of his shoes, his mother proceeded to open her mouth, beginning to speak. "Izuku, do you have everything?" Inko wondered with motherly curiousness and worry, fearing that he might have forgotten to put something important he needed for his first day into his backpack. "Yes, Mom, I have everything," Izuku answered as he completed the tying of one of his shoes. "Are you sure, honey?" our dear hero's mother questioned with parental anxiety. "I'm sure," our young Cambion assured, then continued. "Now, I need to go," he declared, then stood up from his crouch and walked to the front door of the apartment, grabbing its handle with his left hand. "I'm going to get late," he stated with nervosity in his voice, being afraid of the thought that despite waking up a bit sooner, he might get late on his first day of high school. Then, he pushed the handle of the door downwards, unlocking it and offering a chance for both his shadowy helper and himself to step out of the apartment. But he was about to open it fully. He was interrupted in his act by his mother, who went on with her speech. "Izuku," Inko started, desiring to say one more thing to her son before he set off. "What is it?" Izuku inquired with now larger anxiousness, looking back at his mother, with his shadowy companion performing the same activity. But at the moment he set his eyes on his mother, he saw something he didn't expect to witness. As his mother observed the floor, in the corner of her eyes, small droplets began to form, causing our young overlord to think that something bad happened that resulted in his mother becoming upset. Thankfully, his assumptions were disproven when his mother unlocked her mouth and continued her speech. "I'm so proud of you," Inko stated with motherly pride, witnessing her son with a proud smile. Izuku was taken aback by hearing this. He knew that his mother was proud of him for the fact that he got enrolled in the hero high school he desired to learn in the most, but it was still surprising for him to hear this from her. And truth be told, sometimes, deep down in his heart, Izuku himself couldn't believe that he accomplished studying at UA High. Hearing his female parent's statement, all the nervosity he felt instantly vanished, causing our dear hero to morph his own smile, witnessing his mother with his eyes in the process. "I'm off. Bye, Mom," Izuku declared smilingly, saying goodbye to his mother. Then, he opened the door completely, and with Shadow by his side, he stepped out of the apartment, beginning his journey towards Japan's top hero academy and officially starting his high school career. After closing the door and heading down the stairs, our young Cambion decided to walk in the direction of the nearest train station and go nearer the school, just like at the time he went to UA to take the entrance exam of the school. Once reaching the train station, he boarded the train he needed and sat down on one of the seats, with Shadow disappearing from sight, not wanting to disturb the peace on the train with his presence. Once they arrived at the train station they needed, Izuku ascended from the seat was sitting on and exited the public transport vehicle, getting out of the train a couple of minutes later, with his shadowy companion coming out of his hideout and following his master in the process. After leaving the train station, our protagonist proceeded to walk towards the location of his high school, which was easy to find thanks to its huge size and its being placed on a hill, with his shadowy helper floating next to him throughout his way towards it. In the middle of his journey, Izuku pulled his phone out of his right pocket and checked the time on it, performing this act to see if he had enough time to get there before the first bell. But when he did this, he was shocked to find out that he was 10 minutes away from the start of the first lesson, making him become extremely panicked and causing him to put his phone back into his right pocket and fasten his steps, eventually starting to run, with Shadow trying to keep up with him. Luckily for him, after a few minutes of running, our young overlord reached the gates of UA, rushing through it and continuing to jolt in the direction of the main building of the school. All the while he was followed by his shadowy helper. Once he got to the main entrance of his high school, he grabbed the handle of one of the doors, moved it down, and unlocked the door, allowing himself and Shadow to enter the building. Once inside, Izuku headed towards the stairs of the school, planning to go and run up on them due to his classroom being positioned on one of the upper floors. After he reached the floor where all the classrooms of this year's freshmen were located, our dear hero turned to the left and went on with his running in that direction, searching for his classroom as his shadowy companion accompanied him on this journey. Class 1A, Class 1A, come on, where is it? Izuku said anxiously, searching for his classroom as he ran through the hallway that, on the left side, had classrooms placed, and on the right side, possessed enormous windows, offering every student on the floor to look outside and observe the woody, forested area that surrounded the country's #1 ranked hero school. Fortunately, he didn't have to search for long. Just a few seconds later he said this statement. His visionary organs got the attention of the small sign that was positioned high on the wall, with its title saying 1A, thus signaling that the entrance of our dear hero's classroom was right under it. There it is, our protagonist exclaimed in relief, calming down a little bit after he saw the sign of his high school classroom while rushing in its direction with his shadowy helper in the process. But when he and Shadow reached the entrance of the classroom, they were taken by surprise by what they witnessed. The wooden, brown-colored sliding door that separated the classrooms inside and the hallway from one another was giant, being 3 times larger than our dear hero and acquiring the same title as the tiny sign as well. Although in the case of the door, the one a title was red-colored, was placed vertically on the surface of the door, and were huge as well, matching the size of the door. As Izuku and Shadow observed the enormous door in surprise, with the former thinking it was that large for accessibility, allowing even a student with a giant quirk to get inside, he reminded himself that he couldn't be distracted. He was in UA, Japan's top hero academy, where only the most elite ones, who possessed the best capabilities and who were chosen from the many examinees, could get in and could have a chance to learn in. And as he thought about this, the images of his childhood friend and the blue-haired male student flashed in his mind, resulting in him quickly adopting fear towards them due to him thinking that they might have become his classmates. But the moment he thought about them, our protagonist shook his head, attempting to make the images of those people vanish from his head. He couldn't allow himself to become anxious and unsettled just by the possibility of them being in the same class as him. After all, it was the very first day of his high school career, and he should have tried to enjoy this part of his life and make new friends here despite those 2 people being there, just as his demonic relatives, friends, and teachers suggested him to do so. So, after reminding himself of the kind advice of his demonic loved ones, he grabbed the handle of the sliding door with his right hand and began to slide the door to the right, opening the door of the classroom he would learn in for the upcoming 4 years and wishing to enter it with the hope of those 2 scary students not being in there, all the while Shadow, due to his shyness around new people, morphed back into his shadow form, going back to his hiding place and disappearing from sight. Unfortunately for Izuku, his hope was shattered in the blink of an eye when he slightly unlocked the door, letting him peek inside and set his eyes upon the spiky-haired explosion quirk user and the blue-haired student who were wearing the same type of uniforms as him, being in the room, looking at one another and arguing with each other. "Put your feet down from the desk," the male student demanded with a serious expression and tone as he witnessed Bakugo keeping his feet on the desk. "Huh?" Bakugo questioned with a smug smile, not giving a single shit about what his classmate had just said. "It's rude to the UA upperclassmen who used these desks before us and to the people who made these desks," the male student explained seriously as he pointed at the furniture with his left index finger. "Nope," the blonde, spiky-haired teenager replied smugly, keeping his smug smile on his face and his legs on the desk. "What kind of junior high did you go, you side character?" he inquired arrogantly, not giving a shit about the request of his classmate, surprising him with his response. Meanwhile, Izuku just observed the whole scene in complete silence, thinking that he will have quite a really good 3 years with these 2 in his class. "I attended semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida," the blue-haired male student announced as he positioned his left hand on his chest and performed a small robotic movement with his right hand, introducing himself as Tenya Ida. "Summy?" Bakugo queried, then continued. "So you're a damn elite, huh?" he questioned. "Looks like I'll have fun crushing you," the explosion quirk user stated with the same smug expression. "Crushing?" Ida repeated, absolutely shocked by Bakugo's reply. "That's cruel. Do you truly plan to become a hero?" he wondered in disgust, with the only answer he received from Bakugo for his question was just a tired sigh, having enough of his officious behavior and looking away from him. But as the spiky-haired teenager performed this act, From the corner of his eyes, he noticed the presence of someone standing at the now fully open sliding door, causing him to turn his head and set his upon our dear hero, with the blue-haired male student doing the same activity once he saw that Bakugo looked away from him and focused his attention on someone else. Ida started as he witnessed our young cambion being positioned at the entrance of the classroom, making every single student in the room move their heads away from him and Bakugo and look at our protagonist, including the mysterious, black-haired girl with a scarred, blind left eye from the day of entrance exam, who was sitting at the back of the classroom, and who observed our dear hero with widened eyes and surprise, which surprise quickly transformed into joy by seeing him, becoming extremely happy after seeing that she was going to learn in the same class as him. Izuku stuttered in awkwardness, flattening his ears and tail from the feeling he experienced and from the fact that everyone was looking at him. "Good morning," Ida declared, causing our protagonist to get out of his embarrassed state and focus his attention on the ex-Sumi student once again. "I am from Sumi Private Academy. My name is," he said with the same serious expression as he began to approach Izuku, performing robotic movements with his hands in doing so. "I heard everything," Izuku stated nervously as he held his hands up, signaling Ida that he didn't need to introduce himself to him, interrupting his speech and resulting in him stopping in his tracks. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Ida," he stated, introducing himself to Ida. "I see," Ida responded. "Midoriya, you realized there was something more to the practical exam, didn't you?" he inquired, referring to the fact that since the practical exam was a test, rescuing and helping other examinees also worth points, with Izuku not knowing what he was referring to, thus surprising and confusing him with his question. "I had no idea," the blue-haired teenager confessed, then went on with his speech. "I misjudged you," the member of the Ida family told expressed, referring back to the time he scolded him in the auditorium of the entrance exam, lifting his hands up and pointing at Izuku with them. "I hate to admit it, but you're better than me," he declared in a defeated tone, feeling ashamed of himself due to talking our protagonist. "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about," our dear hero answered with total confusion in his voice as he straightened his ears and tail, not having a single clue what his fellow classmate had just told him. "Wow, you made it in too?" someone with a familiar voice exclaimed in a mixture of excitement and surprise behind Izuku, making our young overlord turn his body around in order to set his eyes upon the individual. And when he performed this act, he was shocked to find out that the one who told him this and stood behind him was the same brown-haired girl from the day of the entrance exam who tried to help him not to fall, and whom he and his shadowy friend saved from being crushed by the zero-pointer. As he observed the girl with his eyes, thinking that the uniform she was wearing really suited her, she continued her speech, not losing a single bit from her gleeful behavior. "You were so cool during the practical exam," the teenager girl remarked with a sweet smile on her face. "You destroyed that giant robot with your tentacles in an instant," she noted as she moved her right arm up and down in front of her body in an excited manner, resulting in our dear hero's face lightening up and his ears and tail being lowered, covering his face with his both of hands in an attempt to hide his blush in the process. As this interaction unfolded between the two teenagers, the black-haired mysterious just witnessed the whole scene with a mischievous grin on her face, already planning and knowing that she would tease the hell out of Izuku for this conversation of his with that teenager girl. But she was not the only one who was looking at our young champion. At the front row, Bakugo was also observing him with a frustrated expression, being already ticked off even by Izuku's presence. How dare he defy him? He clearly told him to not dare to come here. He told him throughout many years that he would never have a single chance to get enrolled in UA. But despite his bullying and making him obtain fear for him, the damn nerd still didn't give up. This made him acquire more anger and hatred towards him. These feelings grew even larger when he found out that Izuku managed to get into the country's #1 ranked hero school, with this information being presented to him by his junior high school homeroom teacher, who congratulated both him and our protagonist. He was furious after hearing this. He was so enraged that once the school day was over, he dragged him to the back of the school and shouted at them, accusing Izuku of cheating and reminding him once again that he ordered him to never try to apply to UA High. With Shadow not intervening only because his master didn't want him to do so, knowing that if Shadow took action, he would have injured Bakugo badly. But as the explosion Quirk said this to him, our dear hero grabbed his hand and with teary eyes, he declared that because of the kind efforts of some people truly important to him, not revealing that the ones who helped were actual demons in hell of course, he would never give up his dream and would go and learn in his dream school, announcing that there was nothing to stop him from doing this, not even him. So, after hearing this from him, becoming surprised even by his confidence to stand up against him, Bakugo decided whether Izuku would go to UA or not. He would still crush his dream, showing him that he never had a chance to become a pro hero, one way or another. As he went on looking at him with his eyes, turning his head away frustratedly from the direction Izuku was foundable after he had enough of witnessing him, the interaction between the brown-haired girl and our young overlord continued to go on, with the former still obtaining her excited attitude and the latter covering his face in an attempt to cover his face. "I'm so excited," the girl stated. "Which will come first? The entrance ceremony or the orientation? Who will be our teachers? How will they look?" she listed excitedly, moving her hands up and down in her excitement. "Aren't you excited?" she asked from our protagonist, who was no capable of answering her question thanks to how embarrassed he was by her talking to him and how close she was to him, covering his face, which was as red as a fresh tomato, with his hands in the process. "If you came here to make friends, you should leave immediately," someone noted behind the teenager girl, causing Izuku to make his blush vanish, move his hands away from his head, look down, and set his eyes upon the person who had just made this remark. And when he did, the statement that he became absolutely shocked by what he saw would be an understatement, making the girl turn around and become shocked as well. Behind the back of the brown-haired girl, an adult man with long, black-colored hair, facial hair, and bags under his eyes was foundable, being positioned inside an oversized yellow sleeping bag, with his tired and cold face being the only part of his body that was shown, laying on the cold ground while he was looking at the students. "This is the hero course. We make heroes here," he stated as he pulled out a juice box out of his sleeping bag with his right hand, squeezing it and sucking what had remained from the fruit juice inside it, stunning the Izuku, Ida, and the teenager girl even more. "It took you 8 seconds to become quiet," he said as he stood in his sleeping bag and started to unzip. "Time is limited. You kids are not thinking rationally," the man declared, exiting his sleeping bag, revealing his posture to the trio and surprising them with his appearance, including our young overlord. Was this man a teacher at UA? Which meant he was also a pro hero? But by his look, Izuku couldn't think of a single who would like the man in front of him. But as he observed the man with more detail, such as witnessing the clothes he wore and the scarf he acquired around his neck, our protagonist soon realized that the adult man in front of him was indeed a hero, and not an ordinary one. The man was none other than the famous eraser hero, Eraserhead. He couldn't believe it. Eraserhead, the eraser hero, was in front of him, in the living flesh, and he was only one hero out of the many who taught at Japan's top hero academy. And because of this, the fanboy side of our young Cambion couldn't wait to truly start his studying there after this day ended. As he witnessed the hero, Eraserhead continued his speech, looking at the whole class in the process. "I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. It's nice to meet you," Eraserhead announced without any emotion on his face, revealing his full name to his class and shocking them with his announcement. "Now, put these on and go out to the field. We have work to do," Aizawa requested as he pulled a blue-colored gym shirt out of his sleeping, surprising and confusing not only our trio but every single student in the classroom with his request. But since he was their homeroom teacher, they had to do as he told them. So, every student, including our young overlord, approached the entrance of the room and exited it, each of them taking a gym shirt and jeans that the eraser hero offered as they stepped out of the classroom, with Izuku doing this act after he put his backpack down on his desk. After that, every student headed in the direction of the nearest dressing rooms, with girls and boys taking separate ones of course, taking their uniforms off and dressing up into the gym clothes they got. Once everyone was ready, they exited the dressing rooms and headed towards the exit of the building, stepping through it. Then, after a bit of walking, they finally reached the field area of the school, where their homeroom teacher was already waiting for them. "You are 2 minutes late," Aizawa stated with an unfeeling expression, then went on with his speech. "You need to be more precise. he remarked. Let's get to the main point. He said, then continued, you're going to make a quirk assessment test now. He revealed, then moved his body around, facing the field and showing his back to his students, shocking every one of them to their very core with his announcement. But what about the entrance ceremony and the orientation? The girl with brown-colored hair questioned with a mixture of worry and shock, still taken aback by the fact that they were going to take a test on the first day of school. If you want to become heroes, you don't need such leisurely events, Eraserhead remarked, surprising his class even more. UA's selling point is how unrestricted its school traditions are. He declared without any emotion, that's also how we teachers run our classes, Aizawa said, looking at his student from the corner of his eye, then turning his body around, facing them fully. You kids have been doing physical fitness tests, right? He wondered, holding up his phone with his left hand, with his communication device showing the 8 types of exercises of a fitness test. But during these tests, you weren't allowed to use your quirks, he stated. The country still uses averages taken from results, not using their quirks. It's not rational. The Eraser Hero said, well, the Ministry of Education is still procrastinating. He noted, then set his upon on our dear hero. Midoriya, you finished at the top in the practical exam, right? Aizawa queried our young Cambion, surprising him with his question and absolutely shocking Bakugo with what had he just said. In junior high, what was your best result in softball? 52 meters. Izuku responded with a little bit of shyness in his voice. Then, try doing it with your quirk, Eraserhead suggested, tossing a softball into the hands of our dear hero, who almost dropped it accidentally, but caught it nonetheless. I don't care what you're going to do, just stay in the circle, he insisted. Okay, Izuku replied. Then, with the softball in his right hand, he stepped forward, approaching the white circle while his childhood friend looked at him with pure fury, full of rage after hearing that Izuku took the first place instead of him. Once he was inside the circle, our young overlord turned his head in the direction of his homeroom teacher, who opened his mouth and began to speak once his green-haired student looked at him. Go on, give it your best shot, Aizawa stated with a bored tone, choosing our protagonist not only for the reason of him finishing first place in the practical exam, but also for desiring to witness him using his quirk more closely, which of course, our dear hero didn't have knowledge of. After his teacher said this to him, Izuku nodded to him in response, then moved his head back to its original position, placed his left thumb and left index finger under his, and began to think about how should he perform the act his teacher requested him to do. He couldn't utilize his big explosion attack since he could use it once a day and he could only destroy huge targets with it. He didn't wish to ask Shadow to throw the ball as well, not wanting him to become disturbed due to how many new people were in the area who could see him. The only aspect of his quirk he could use to throw the softball were his tentacles. And since 3 tentacles were too many to throw it, one of his tentacles should have been enough. So, with his plan being complete and settled, he removed his fingers from under his chin, touched his left thumb and index finger to each other, and snapped with them, making a fiery portal open at his right side and causing a black-colored tentacle to arise from it, resulting in everyone becoming shocking by seeing the tentacle, with the only 3 exceptions being Bakugo, the Eraser Hero, and the mysterious black-haired girl, with the most former observing the scene with a frustrated look, Eraserhead looking at our young Cambion unemotionally, and the most latter witnessing the green-haired teenager boy with a smile, happy to see him use his abilities. Once the tentacle came out of the portal, it bent and slowly moved towards Izuku, pointing at his face with its end. After his tentacle got close to him, our protagonist extended his right hand in the direction of the tentacle, offering it the softball. In response, the tentacle moved forward and gently wrapped its end around the ball, grabbing it and taking it from its master, positioning its body back next to Izuku. Then, our dear hero moved his right hand towards his tentacle a tiny bit and began to concentrate, causing a green aura to appear around his right hand, with the same aura being adopted by the tentacle as well. Shortly after this, the green aura disappeared from around both Izuku's hand and his tentacle. Our young overlord moved his hand back and forth, testing that if he was controlling the tentacle, all the while keeping his hand in a position that seemed like he was still holding the softball in his hand. As he moved his right hand, the tentacle moved as well, mimicking the movements of its master's hand. After being 100% certain that everything was right and his tentacle followed the movements of his hand, Izuku moved his whole arm backwards, preparing himself to make his tentacle throw the ball, with the tentacle mimicking the move of his hand by leaning back, almost touching the ground even. Then, in a single and quick moment, Izuku moved his arm forward in a way that looked as if he was throwing the ball, causing the tentacle to launch the softball into the air with immense force, shocking everyone. Even the explosion Quirk, with this, the two exceptions being the black-haired teenager girl, who looked at the scene with the smile she adopted earlier, and Aizawa, who observed the situation without a single trace of emotion, now being obtained with the information of how exactly Izuku's powers worked. After the throw was accomplished and the ball landed on the ground, the phone that the Eraser hero acquired suddenly buzzed, signaling to him that the results of the action our protagonist performed and causing him to speak up. "Know your maximum limit first," Eraserhead said, then continued. "That is the most rational way to form the foundation of a hero," he declared as he turned around to face his class and lifted his left hand that had his phone in it, showing off the results of Izuku's throw, which was 950 meters, shocking the whole class, except the black-haired girl of course, with this. 950 meters? A yellow-haired teenager boy questioned in surprise. "Seriously? This looks so fun." A girl with pink skin, pink hair, yellow horns, and eyes with black sclera, yellow irises, and black pupils, beamed with excitement. "We can use our quirks as much as we want." A teenager boy, who had black hair and weird elbows that looked like cylindrical tape dispensers, stated excitedly. "I love the hero course," he said with enthusiasm, causing the homeroom teacher to obtain an idea that probably every student in the class won't like very much. "So this is fun for you?" Aizawa wondered, surprising everyone a little bit with the tone of his voice. "All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential and will be expelled from the class," he announced with a bit sinister smile, shocking everyone with his announcement, especially Izuku. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. The person who would be last in the tests would be expelled. Was his teacher even allowed to do this? And as he thought about this, an anxiety that was as large, or even larger than the one he experienced on the day of the entrance exam manifested inside his body. What if he messed up one of the tests, or worse, failed multiple ones and got kicked out of the school? If this had happened, the efforts of his demonic relatives would have turned into nothingness, and he couldn't allow that to happen. But what if, despite all of his strength, he failed the tests anyway and got expelled? These were the thoughts that appeared in the mind of our protagonist, all the while his tentacle retreated back inside the fiery portal, which closed after the tentacle vanished in it, and the girl he and his shadowy helper saved spoke up. "The last will be expelled?" the brown-haired teenager girl queried in shock. "It's just the first day of school. Even if it wasn't, this would be unfair," she stated, shocked by her homeroom teacher's statement. "Natural disasters, big accidents, and selfish villains," Eraserhead listed, then went on with his speech. "Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted," he said. "Japan is covered with unfairness. The heroes are the ones who reverse those situations." Aizawa declared to his students, "It's not junior high anymore. For the upcoming 3 years, UA will do all it can to give you one hardship after another." He stated casually, "Go beyond. Plus ultra," the Eraser hero said, reminding his class to the motto of the country's #1 ranked hero school. "Show me what you can do," he remarked as he raised his right hand and moved his right index finger back and forth, calling his students to kind of a challenge, who all listened to this in silence and shock, including Izuku, who was still standing in the circle. One of the shocked students was Bakugo. Although his stun was not due to the announcement of his teacher, it was mainly thanks to him witnessing the bigger strength of our young Cambion. How did he get so powerful in such a short period of time? As far as the spiky-haired teenager was concerned, Izuku was just a puny, weak nerd who always ticked him off with just his presence and with his dream of becoming a hero, and who lacked a father figure in his life and had a strange quirk. But now, he was not only able to control his abilities, but he grew even more stronger than him. Heck, he even surpassed him in the practical exam, making him so angry that he created tiny explosions in the palms of his hands. Something was definitely up. "Deku!" Bakugo screamed in anger as he rushed in the direction of our dear hero, not being able to contain his rage towards him, surprising everyone with this action of his. What the hell was this? Deku, tell me, he ordered as ran towards Izuku, ready to use explosion quirk on him, frightening our protagonist with his threatening approach immediately and causing him to scream in fear and lower his ears and tail in afraidness. This was the moment when Shadow had enough. He didn't care about how shy he was around new people. He would never allow the asshole his master considered his childhood friend to hurt him and ruin his first day of high school. After all, it was his duty, his lifelong mission to protect his master from anything that could harm him. So, with this, he came out of his shadow form in an instant, changed into his protective form in a matter of seconds, and clawed the right hand of the explosion quirk user with the talons on his left hand, doing in a manner that he didn't injure him, grabbing Bakugo's right hand with his left hand, and lifting his right hand, ready to strike once again if it was necessary. As the shadowy companion of our protagonist grabbed the right hand of the blonde, spiky-haired teenager boy, who observed him with frustration, everyone just witnessed the scene in shock, completely taken aback by the sudden appearance and look of Shadow, with the only exception being the black-haired girl, who just stared at the scene with a smirk on her face, delighted to see everyone witness that he would happen if they tried to hurt Izuku. One of the more surprised students of Class 1A was a boy with a black-colored bird head that possibly resembled the head of a raven, and with a yellowish beak. He thought his quirk was the only one in the class that was shadow-based and was also sentient and was kind of a protector for him, but it seemed to him that he was sorely mistaken. By seeing the shadowy helper of our dear hero in this state, with him even opening a mouth full of razor-sharp black-colored teeth in order to warn and make Bakugo rethink his previous choice of action, Aizawa became enveloped in a little bit of surprise, not expecting the shadowy helper to be capable of changing his appearance. But he fastly shook that surprise off, set his eyes upon our young overlord, and proceeded to activate his quirk, making his black-colored hair stand and causing his eyes to light up in a red color, using his special ability in an attempt to separate the shadow and the explosion quirk user by erasing Izuku's temporarily, thus eliminating the possibility of any of his students getting hurt. But at the moment he performed this activity, he made a shocking discovery. When Eraserhead looked at Izuku with his quirk, the shadow didn't disappear, thus indicating that he didn't erase his special ability. But how was that possible? His quirk, Eraser, should have been capable of erasing the quirk of any individual he set his upon until he blinked. And yet, for some reason, he could deactivate the quirk of this single, green-haired, deer-eared, deer-tailed, deer-antlered student. And because of this, he became more eager to know what was the reason for the weird special ability of our young Cambion. After he washed his shock off of himself, the Eraser hero proceeded to make his quirk inactive, resulting in his black hair lowering and his eyes losing the red color, turning back into their original form. Then, with an expression that showed no sign of emotion, he unlocked his mouth and began to speak. "All right, that's enough," Aizawa said with boredom and unfeelingness in his voice. "Midoriya, Bakugo, come back here," he requested, with the spiky-haired teenager freeing himself from Shadow's grip, turning around, and began to walk back to the class, while Shadow observed him as he performed this act. "Oh, okay," Izuku responded in afraidness, which he obtained due to fearing that because of the act his shadowy companion did, he would be expelled from the class. Hearing the scared tone of his master, Shadow came out of his angered state, causing him to turn around and look at his master, allowing him to witness him in his worried state. Upon seeing his master in this state, at that moment, Shadow finally realized what he had done, making him set his red eyes on the class in surprise, change back into his normal form, and fly back to his master. Hiding behind his back with flattened ears and a sad expression on his face, judging by the shape of his jungle green eyes, performing this activity due to his shyness and the guilt he felt for getting his one true master in an embarrassing situation like this. Once his shadowy helper had reached him, in an awkward silence, our protagonist moved his legs and started to return to his class, joining back to them after he got to them and focusing his attention back on his homeroom teacher, hoping that he wouldn't get kicked out of the school for his shadowy friend's act, while Shadow stayed behind him, eventually turning back into his shadow form and vanishing from sight. And with this, the quirk assessment test of Class 1A had truly begun, starting with the first activity, the 50-meter dash. During this test, all the students attempted to use their special capabilities, such as the Ida utilizing his engine quirk to run faster, and the blonde-haired boy using his laser to shoot himself forward, just like a rocket. In the case of Izuku, once he started running, he utilized his teleportation to reach the goal as fast as possible, resulting in him getting to the end of the 50-meter dash in 4.50 seconds, just a little bit later than his childhood friend. The second exercise in the test was not other than grip strength. In this test, the students had to grip the device in their hands as hard as they could, proceeding to use their abilities if they were suited for this test. Due to his quirk not possessing any kind of expect that could help him in this exercise, Izuku could only let out the force that his muscular body, which he acquired thanks to the hard training he did with his uncle, was capable of, which was not more than 56 kilograms. The third objective was the standing long jump. As expected, those students who could utilize their quirk in this exercise used their special abilities to lengthen the distance of the jump they performed. Our young Cambion was no different. In this test, in the of his jumping, he utilized his teleporting capability, just like in the case of the 50-meter dash, to leap a larger distance, causing him to jump over the sandbox and land a few meters away from it, thus performing a 16 meters long leap. The standing long jump was followed by the repeated side steps. During this exercise, the students had to perform as many side steps as they could, being allowed to utilize their quirks to assist themselves. In Izuku's case, he used his teleportation ability to score as many steps as he could, resulting in him doing quite a lot of side steps in a short amount of time. Of course, thanks to him utilizing the teleport aspect of his special capability, our young overlord experienced a slight headache and a bit of nausea, but he attempted to ignore the pain, knowing that he had to focus on the test. The next test after the repeated side steps was the ball throw. Since our dear hero had already performed that exercise at the beginning of the quirk assessment test in order to demonstrate what this whole test was about, just like his teacher asked him to, he didn't need to do the ball throw again. Instead, he just observed how his fellow classmates used their quirk to throw the softball, with the girl with brown hair even throwing the ball into an infinite distance with the help of her special ability. The sixth objective was not other than the good old sit-ups, during which our protagonist accomplished quite a good amount, all the while his feet were kept on the ground by a tiny boy, who was around his age but was almost smaller than his aunt, with purple hair that resembled grapes, who told him that he was into tentacles, which remark really confused Izuku. This same purple-haired boy was the same person who aided our dear hero during the seventh test, the seated toe touch, which activity Izuku performed very well. And at last, they arrived at 8 and the last exercise of the quirk assessment test, the long-distance run. In this activity, everyone had to run a long distance as fast as they could, utilizing their quirk if they could. Our young Cambion was not an exception. He moved his legs as quickly as it was possible for him, causing him to obtain an average place in this objective due to his special capability not possessing any kind of aspect that could assist him in this task. And with this, the quirk assessment test had finally ended. After the last student in class 1 had reached the end of the running field, everyone gathered in front of their homeroom teacher, who, with a bored and unfeeling expression, began to speak once all of his students were set in front of him. "Okay, I'll quickly tell you the results," Eraserhead stated as he witnessed his tired class, most of them worrying about their results, including our protagonist. "The total is simply the marks you got from each test," he explained, then continued. "It's a waste of time to explain verbally, so I'll just show you results all at once," the Eraser Hero said, then pushed a button on his phone that was in his left hand, making a holographic screen to be emitted by the communication device. On a holographic screen, the names of each student in the class were presented, with the number of points they scored next to their names, thus showing the place they earned in the whole test. When Izuku set his eyes on the screen, he immediately started to look for his name in worry, wanting to know how big of a score he earned during the quirk assessment test, fearing that he might have gotten the last place. But to his surprise, that was not the case. Instead, our young overlord accomplished the 4th place in the test, with the last place being occupied by the same tiny, purple-haired boy who assisted him in the sit-ups and the seated toe touch, who looked at the screen in a mixture of shock and sadness, not being capable of believing that he got kicked out of his high school on the first day, making our dear hero feel bad for him. However, all of these feelings that the purple-haired teenager boy possessed were completely washed away when the homeroom of Class 1 went on with his speech. By the way, no one's getting expelled, he noted as he touched a button on his phone and made the holographic screen vanish, stunning his students with his remark. I just wanted everyone to give it their all in the test, he revealed with a smile, absolutely shocking everyone with his statement, especially Izuku. Did you really not realize it? A tall, teenager girl with black hair kept in a spiky ponytail wondered as she observed her fellow classmates. It was easy to notice that it was a lie, she declared casually, like it was a usual phenomenon that a teacher lied about someone getting expelled if the person was at the last place, causing her classmates to look at her in disbelief, can't believing that she knew it was a bluff from the beginning. That was kinda nerve-wracking, right? The black-haired teenager boy remarked from a boy around his age who had spiky red hair. I'll take any challenge anytime, the red-haired boy answered with confidence in his voice, while Bakugo just witnessed our protagonist with frustration for a little bit, still angry at him for suddenly being far stronger than he thought, looking away from him in anger after a few seconds. With this, we're done here, Eraserhead stated, then continued. Go back to the dressing rooms and dress back up. You're free to go home now, he declared, then turned his body and began to walk towards the gym building nearby, wishing to enter the main building of UA through another entrance, leaving his students on the field. As he reached the gym building, rounded its corner, and passed by its wall, he was confronted by the newest teacher of the school, the #1 hero, All Might, who was in his muscular form and was wearing a yellow suit and jeans with black vertical stripes, a white shirt, and a blue tie. Aizawa, you little liar, the symbol of peace said with his well-known smile. Pulling a prank on the first day? April Fool's was 1 week ago. What are you doing here, All Might? Aizawa queried with a tone filled with boredom. I just wanted to check on young Midoriya, All Might explained, wishing to know how the kid he gave advice nearly a year ago performed in the test. He has something special in him, doesn't he? Well, he's all right, the eraser hero remarked with a bored tone, but the strangest thing happened. When I used my quirk on him, nothing happened. It seemed like my quirk was somehow immune to him, he stated, still a bit surprised by this revelation. Really? The #1 hero wondered. Interesting. Why are you interested in him? Aizawa inquired. A little early to choose favorites, you know? Something caught my eye about him, the symbol of peace explained as he turned his head in the direction of our protagonist, observing him with his eyes. Other than summoning giant tentacles and a shadowy bodyguard, Eraserhead questioned. Other than that, All Might replied with honesty as he moved his head back to its original position, focusing his attention back on his colleague. Well, he has the potential to be a great hero, like the others, if he was given enough time, the eraser hero announced, considering the words of his newest colleague. See you around, All Might, he said, saying goodbye to the #1 hero and continuing his way in the direction of the main building, determined to know the truth behind the strangeness of his dear-eared student. All the while All Might observed him leave, not noticing that the black-haired girl noticed his presence, looking at him with an expression that was a mixture of worry and seriousness. Once his homeroom teacher vanished from sight, our young Cambion released a sigh of relief, knowing that the whole kicking out thing was just a hoax and the first day of high school was finally over. As he performed this activity, most of his classmates began to head towards the entrance of the main building, desiring to do as their homeroom teacher told them. But as they performed this activity, instead of walking in the direction of the nearest dressing room, one of the students attempted to approach our dear hero, beginning to talk to him once they reached him. Well, this was something, the student noted as she observed the place the eraser hero stood previously with a smile, resulting in our protagonist turning his head in the direction of the person who was speaking to him, allowing him to see that the classmate who was talking to him was the teenager girl who saw him in the crowd on the day of the entrance exam, which, of course, he didn't have knowledge of, and had long black hair and a blind left eye that acquired a huge vertical scar to be precise and stood at his left side. What? Izuku questioned in confusion as he looked at the girl. I mean, this whole quirk assessment test shit, it was quite interesting, you know? The black-haired girl remarked joyfully. Yeah, our young overlord responded, still obtaining his confusion as he moved his head in the direction the girl was looking. "Hey, you're Midoriya, right?" the girl inquired from our young overlord with curiousness, looking at him and smiling in the process. "Yes, I'm Midoriya," Izuku replied, bringing a bigger smile to the girl's face. "Great," the black-haired girl beamed with happiness. "Meet me at the toilet after the day is over. I've got a surprise for you," she announced gleefully, then moved her legs and proceeded to follow her classmates and walked in the direction the entrance of the main building, while Izuku went on observing her as she got further and further away from him. There was something strange about that girl for him. He had never seen her in her life, but somehow, due to her voice and the giant scar on her left eye, she was also familiar to him as well. And to top it off, she wanted to meet him at the toilet for some unknown reason, saying that she had a surprise for him. And because of these reasons and for wishing who she really was, he decided to go along with the request the girl told him. So, with his decision being made inside his mind, he attempted to follow his classmates in their tracks and walked towards the entrance of UA. Wanting to go inside the dressing room, he took his gym clothes on to get changed back into his uniform. All the while the purple-haired small teenager boy witnessed him with pure jealousy, thinking that our young Cambion had already got a girl for himself. After Izuku reached the entrance of the main building, he grabbed the handle of one of the doors with his right hand and pushed it downwards, unlocking the door and allowing himself to step inside. Once he was in the building, not closing the door thanks to a few of his classmates getting inside after him, he went up the stairs and headed in the direction of the dressing room he desired to go in, arriving at its door a couple of minutes later. When he got to the entrance of the dressing room, he touched the handle with his right, moved it down, and opened it, repeating the same action he did in the case of the door of the main building of Japan's #1 Hero Academy and letting him and his male classmates who were behind him to enter the room, where the rest of the male students of the class were already changing back into their uniforms. Once he got back into his high school uniform, our dear hero stepped out of the dressing room and headed towards his classroom, entering it and putting his yellow backpack on his back, getting out of his classroom, and beginning to look for the location of the toilet room, with his shadowy friend coming out of his hideout and accompanying him in this journey. He didn't need to search for long. 1 or 2 minutes later, he found the place where the toilet was located, being just 3 classrooms away from his classroom. And the place was not empty. Near the door of the toilet room, at the left side of the short hallway, the black-haired who wanted to speak with him was foundable, leaning to the wall at the left and having her arms crossed, observing the floor in her waiting as her black-colored backpack was laying on the floor at her left side, having a red, circle-shaped sticker on that acquired a large M letter with black and white stripes in the middle. Once she heard the approaching footsteps of our protagonist, she looked from the floor and set her eyes upon Izuku and Shadow, making her adopt a sweet smile on her face. "You're here," the teenager exclaimed in joy. "Yeah, I'm here," Izuku replied a little bit nervously, still not being certain about this secret meeting. "So, what did you want to talk about?" he queried anxiously, wishing to know what was this meeting about. "Well, I want to talk about this," the girl said in a serious tone that was a tiny bit intimidating as well, surprising both our young overlord and his shadowy companion with her sudden change of tone, with the former becoming worried due to thinking that she was going to hurt him, and latter even preparing himself to change into his protective form, ready to protect his master from her if it was needed. But then, something unimaginable happened that neither Izuku nor Shadow expected. After the girl told this to our protagonist, out of nowhere, she leaped forward and extended both of her arms towards our dear hero, wrapping them around his body and embracing him with a big hug, taking both Izuku and Shadow aback with her act and causing the former to blush hard and lower his ears and tail in embarrassment. "I'm so happy to see you, Zuzu." The teenager girl beamed in gleefulness, then released her hug from our protagonist and placed her hands on his shoulders, looking at him right in the eyes. "What happened to you?" "I haven't seen you in 10 months, she declared, then continued. "Wow, looks like you became more muscular since we last saw each other," she noted happily as she removed her from our protagonist's shoulders and looked at his posture with a smile, while the green-haired teen just witnessed all of this happen, almost not being able to speak due to how embarrassed he was. I'm sorry, but do I know why you?" Izuku quizzed as his face became as red as a tomato, surprising the black-haired girl with his question. "Oh, come on Zuzu, how could you not recognize your best friend?" The girl questioned playfully as she stood away from Izuku a little bit and went on her observing him, waiting for him to realize who he was talking to. At first, our young Cambion didn't know what the girl was talking about. How could she be his best friend if he had never met her? But as he continued to witness her appearance, it suddenly struck him. Her long black hair, her blind left eye, her huge scar, and her voice. All of these 4 attributes were only occupied by the imp he had known since he and her were small children. And because of this, after he obtained this realization, all the blush and embarrassment he acquired completely vanished, being replaced by shock thanks to the discovery he made. Wait, Melo? Our young overlord wondered in shock, with his shock being shared by Shadow as well, causing the girl to obtain a bit larger grin on her face. The one and only, she stated jokingly, revealing herself to be indeed Izuku's best imp friend, Melo. What are you doing here? Izuku inquired in fright. They could discover you being an imp and find out that hell exists, he declared in fear, worrying for his childhood friend's safety and being afraid of the possibility that the teachers of Yua could find out about the existence of the realm of suffering. Geez, thanks for greeting me kindly, Zuzu, Melo remarked sarcastically, not wishing to offer her best friend with her remark. Oh, right, sorry, Izuku apologized as he scratched the back of his head with his right hand sheepishly. I'm happy to see you too, Melo, he said, bringing a bright smile to the disguised imp girl's face. But, seriously, what are you doing here? And how do you have a human disguise? He questioned in the mixture of confusion and curiosity, resulting in his best imp friend adopting a smug. Oh, I have my ways, Zuzu, Melo declared with a smirk, then proceeded to put her right hand under the shirt that was a part of her uniform from above, pulling a small chain out of it that was placed around her neck and obtained a red-colored crystal in the middle, surprising Izuku with it due to recognizing what kind of gem it was. Is that an Asmodean crystal? Our young overlord queried in shock as he and Shadow observed the gem. You got him right, Melo answered smugly, witnessing the crystal with proudness. How did you get one? I thought they were given by the King of Lust, Asmodeus himself, Izuku said, knowing all of this thanks to learning a little bit about Hell's society and the rulers of each ring and their roles throughout the years. Do you remember the time when my mom worked for a pharmacy as a deliverer? Melo wondered as she put her necklace back under her uniform, hiding it from sight, witnessing her best friend with a smile in the process. Yes, I remember, Izuku responded, not judging his first demonic friend's mother for bringing drugs from the realm of the living to the fiery pits of hell at all, knowing that they created all sorts of medicine for the demons of hell from them. Well, when my mom got fired from her job for not sleeping with the asshole boss of the pharmacy, her boss forgot to take the Asmodean crystal back and send it back to Asmodeus. The disguised teenager imp girl explained, then resumed her speech. And when I started to work my first job 10 months ago, she decided to give it to me as a small gift, she stated, taking her friend with her statement. Wait, your first job? Izuku quizzed in surprise. You have a job? Yeah, Melo replied, then went on with her speech. Due to our dick of a landlord having a gambling addiction, he keeps to ask us pay more and more for the rent, so much so my mom's paycheck can't afford, she revealed. So, in order to help my mom, I decided to get a job that pays enough for us to pay the bills and the rent. She finished with a worried tone, being afraid of the thought that she and her female parent could lose their home. I'm so sorry, Melo, Izuku said, showing pure empathy for his friend. Listen, if you or Mrs. Darkflame need help, my dad and I can help you anytime, he offered kindly. Oh, you don't need to do this, the imp girl with a human disguise said, declining her best friend's offer, although really appreciating it. We'll manage to get through it, somehow, she remarked as she witnessed the floor in sadness, still acquiring the same anxious tone. After this, she quickly got rid of her unhappiness, going to her cheerful, original self. Oh, and before I forget, don't call me by my real name. Call me Inpu Hensashita, okay? She requested, not wanting her true name to be revealed. Okay, Izuku replied, accepting his friend's request. Then, I think it's time for us to go. We do want to prepare ourselves for tomorrow, don't we, Zuzu? She questioned with a smile. Yeah, we do, Izuku replied with a small smile as Melo grabbed her backpack and placed it on her back, joyful to see his best imp friend, but still not sure about her and her mother not needing any help. With this, our young Cambion, his shadowy helper, and his first demonic friend began their journey towards the exit of the main building of the country's top hero academy, attempting to use the stairs in an attempt to reach the front door. Once they arrived at the floor they needed, the teenager imp girl decided it was the perfect time for her to perform a little bit of teasing on our young overlord, causing her to open her mouth and begin to speak. "So, is there anyone you're interested in, Zuzu Tilda?" Melo wondered with a smirk as she and Izuku walked towards the exit, surprising her friend with her behavior. "No, there isn't," our dear hero responded as he followed her disguised imp friend, confused by his friend's sudden change of character. "Are you sure, Tilda? Because you seemed quite different around that brown-haired girl, Tilda." The disguised imp girl teased with the same smirk on her face, causing our protagonist to adopt a blush on his cheeks. "What?" Izuku quizzed as his face became as red as a tomato. "And no, it's not like tea that," he stuttered as he flattened his ears and tail in his embarrassed state, making his friend giggle at his reaction. "You know I'm just joking, Zuzu," Melo stated with a gleeful smile on her face as she and the rest of the trio reached the exit, with the imp girl grabbing the handle of the exit and pushing it downwards, unlocking the door and allowing the trio to step outside. "I know, Melo, I know," our young overlord answered as he released a sigh to calm himself down, knowing that his friend had been like this for a long time now, following her by stepping through the door she opened and getting out of the building. Closing the door behind his back on his shadowy companion, exited the main building of UA after all three of them were out of the building. They continued their way in the direction of the gates of UA, with Izuku opening his mouth and starting to speak, resuming the conversation between him and his best imp friend. All the while Shadow levitated next to them and observed them. "By the way, why are you at UA? Don't you have a job to do?" Izuku wondered with curiousness, asking his question in not a rude manner. "Well, since me and my co-workers don't have a mission to do at the moment, and because I was always curious about the human world, I thought of joining UA and becoming a student there," Melo explained, "to get a taste of human life, you know." "And how did you get the papers needed for UA?" Izuku questioned. "Since you were born and live in hell, there wasn't a single record about you anywhere on Earth," he stated as he witnessed his friend, referring to the fact that there was not even a birth certificate about her in the mortal realm. Well? The imp girl with a human disguise started with an awkward smile, thinking about making a story up about how she acquired those papers, not wishing to tell her best friend the truth, knowing that if she did, he would totally freak out. Luckily for her, she didn't need to answer this question for her childhood friend, when, out of nowhere, someone shouted at them behind their back. "Ah, Midoriya, you're still here," someone called out behind the group, causing Izuku and the disguised imp girl to stop in their tracks, put an end to their conversation, and turn around in an attempt to see the one who exclaimed, with the shadowy companion performing the same act as them. And when he did this, they saw that the person who shouted was none other than Tenya Ida, the ex-Sumi student who had an engine quirk, taking aback all members of the trio. "Ida?" Izuku said in surprise as the blue-haired student approached him and the rest of the trio. "I thought you had already left the school. I had hoped I could catch up to you," Ida requested with his usual serious expression as he got to them. "May I join?" "Of course," Izuku responded with a smile, then turned back to his original direction and continued his journey towards the front gates of UA, with now Ida being added to the group as its newest member, standing at our young Cambion's left side. "I must say, I was really taken aback by Mr. Aizawa," the engine quirk user noted as he positioned his left hand under his chin. "I even thought this is the best of the best and such. I couldn't imagine a teacher would encourage us with a lie," he stated as he removed his hand from his chin and crossed his arms, expressing the tiny bit of disappointment he felt towards his teacher due to lying to him and to the whole class, while Izuku and Melo listened to what he said, with the former relaying that the ex-Sumi student was just earnest, not scary. "Nah, it was fine for me. I didn't really care much about it." Melo shrugged. "It was just a simple lie he said to spice things up a little bit," she announced casually, although not denying that it really surprised her for a bit as well when it was revealed that the expelling was a hoax. "Hey, you three!" an individual exclaimed behind the group, resulting in them stopping in their walk and moving their heads in order to witness the person who shouted in the first place. with Shadow also sharing this activity with the other members of the group. At the moment they did this, they set their eyes upon the brown-haired girl whom Izuku and Shadow saved during the entrance exam running towards them, attempting to reach their location as fast as possible. "Are you going to the station? Wait for me," she shouted smilingly as she rushed in the direction of the group. "You're the Infinity Girl," Ida remarked as the girl reached him and the group, referring back to the Quirk assessment test when she threw the ball into an infinite distance. "I'm Ochako Uraraka," the girl said, introducing herself as Ochako Uraraka. You're Tenya Ada, and you're Deku Midoriya, right?" she wondered as she looked at the engine Quirk user, then at our protagonist, calling him Deku Midoriya due to the fact that she was not present when he introduced himself to Ida. "Deku?" Izuku quizzed, surprised by Uraraka calling him like that. "But during the fitness test, the boy named Bakugo called you that," the zero-gravity Quirk user stated, referring back to the time when the spiky-haired teenager boy attacked him. Well, my real name is Izuku, but Deku is the name Kaken calls me to make fun of me," our dear hero explained sheepishly as he scratched the back of his head shyly, with Melo thinking of Bakugo with anger, knowing that he bullied her best friend for a long time thanks to Izuku telling him about this when they were younger. "So, an insult?" Ida queried. "Oh, is that right?" Uraraka inquired. "I think it's really cool. It gives a vibe like you can do it," she stated with a bright smile, causing our young Cambion to adopt a blush that enveloped his whole face. "I'm Deku," Izuku declared as his face became as red as a tomato, lowering his ears and tail in the process. "Midoriya," the engine Quirk user exclaimed. "I don't understand. Wasn't it an insult?" he questioned in confusion as performed robotic movements with his hands. "It's like a Copernican revolution," Izuku noted as he turned around and covered his blushed face, attempting to hide his blush from sight. What? Uraraka started in confusion, not knowing what a Copernican revolution was. The Copernican revolution was the paradigm shift between the Ptolemaic and the heliocentric view of the universe. An individual explained behind the group, resulting in the members of the group moving their heads around in an attempt to see the one who suddenly spoke up. When they performed this activity, they laid their eyes upon the teenager boy who possessed the head of a raven, and who was shocked to find out that his special ability was similar to our dear hero's Quirk, which of course, Izuku didn't have knowledge of at that moment, approaching their destination with normal, peaceful steps. "Isn't that correct, Midoriya?" the raven-headed boy said as he reached the group, looking at our young overlord. "Yes, that is right, Izuku answered, surprised by the sudden explanation from his fellow classmate. "Fumikage Tokoyami," the raven-headed boy said, referring to himself as Fumikage Tokoyami. "Oh, okay," our young Cambion replied, still taken aback by Tokoyami's out-of-nowhere speech. "Nice to meet you, Tokoyami," he stated with a smile that was a mixture of nervousness and happiness. "Nice to meet you too, Midoriya," Tokoyami said in a natural tone. "Listen, Midoriya, I was wondering about your Quirk," he implied, surprising our protagonist yet again. "Really?" Izuku wondered in dumbfoundedness. "Yes," the raven-headed teenager responded. "It's kind of similar to mine," he declared, taking aback Izuku even more. "What do you mean?" Izuku quizzed with both confusion and curiosity. "Although I don't possess the ability to summon tentacles, I have a shadowy guard as my Quirk, such as you," he stated. Then suddenly, a blackish, purplish, shadowy, twirling mass began to form out of his body, slowly creating a small body and a pair of arms, both of them acquiring a 5-fingered hand. Then, out of the torso, a neck and a head formed from the twirling mass, with the head of the entity acquiring a shape similar to its owner and yellow, illuminating eyes, thus completing the body of the being. "Wow," Izuku remarked in awe as he witnessed the shadowy entity, with this emotion of his being shared by every other member of the group, including Shadow. "This is Dark Shadow, my Quirk," Tokoyami announced as he moved his left hand and pointed at his own shadowy helper with it. "I can materialize him from my body, and I can control him by giving him orders," he explained, then focused his attention back on our protagonist. "Hello everyone," Dark Shadow declared, greeting everyone in the group nicely, while Izuku just stared at him in shock, not being able to believe that there was someone else who had a special capability somewhat like his. But he was not the only one who was stunned in the group by Dark Shadow's appearance. Our protagonist's shadowy friend was in shock as well, obtaining a more massive one than his master and everyone else in the group. He never, in his entire existence, would have thought that there were others like him. Of course, he personally knew the personal and the numerous other shadows of the father of his master, and he was on good terms with them. He knew he was really similar to him, but it was still shocking for him to find out that there were others like him not only in hell but on earth as well. As Shadow observed the shadowy quirk of the raven-headed teenager, he slowly began to levitate in his direction, stopping in front of him and continuing to witness him in silence, with Dark Shadow doing the same act, acquiring the same kind of shock as Shadow. After this, in a single moment, the shadowy companion of our young overlord hugged him by wrapping his pitch black around the shadowy being's twirling body, showing his joy for meeting him and catching Dark Shadow by surprise, taking aback everyone and freaking out Izuku in the process. "Shadow," Izuku exclaimed in panic, "I'm so sorry Tokoyami, he always does this when he's happy." And he apologized to the owner of the bird-headed shadowy entity, fearing that Shadow might have brought Dark Shadow into a humiliated state. "It's okay," Dark Shadow stated, causing everyone to look at him. "I don't mind," he declared as he observed Shadow with his yellow eyes, causing the shadowy helper to set his jungle green eyes upon him in surprise. Truth be told, this sudden act of his really shocked Dark Shadow, but it didn't really bother him. In fact, he really enjoyed it, knowing that this shadowy being was 100% friendly. And to ensure Shadow that what he said was true, he even performed a thumbs up with his right hand, showing that he was not against this. This assuring activity resulted in Shadow becoming filled with joy, judging by the shape of his eyes, being ensured that the yellow-eyed shadowy entity didn't mind his hug. And with this, Dark Shadow and Shadow had become best friends, becoming the one and only shadow buddies of UA High. "Aw, that's so cute," Uraraka cooed with delight as she and everyone else witnessed the adorable interaction between the two shadowy friends. "A dark friendship forged by gleefulness," Tokoyami remarked with a serious tone as he observed the gesture between Dark Shadow and Shadow with a tiny, tiny smile on his face. "Well, I must say, that's quite a sight," Melo remarked as she observed the wholesome scene with her own smile, making her best friend, who calmed down and adopted a smile on his face as he witnessed the interaction between his shadowy helper and the shadowy guard of his raven-headed classmate, realize with her spoke up that he didn't do something important. "Oh, I almost forgot," Izuku exclaimed in a slight panic, resulting in his shadowy friend releasing his group on Dark Shadow and everyone setting their eyes upon him. "Everyone, this is me. I mean Impu Hensashida, my best friend," he announced, introducing his disguised best imp friend to the members to the group who didn't know her. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Hensashida," Ida greeted, looking at Melo with a smile. "Wait, you two know each other?" Uraraka wondered with surprise in her voice. "You bet," Melo declared with joy, passing her right arm around Izuku's shoulder and pulling him a bit closer. "I have known this nerd for 10 effing years," she announced with delight, making her friend smile at his statement, shocking the rest of the group, especially the engine quirk user, with her cursing. "That's not a type of language a hero would allow himself to speak, Hensashida," the ex-Sumi student demanded angrily as he performed robotic movements with his hands. "Oh, come on Ida. Everyone says curses from time to time," the imp girl stated with a grin, removing her right arm from Izuku's shoulders. "Even you." "Not a single time," the engine quirk user announced, still a little bit frustrated at the disguised imp girl for cursing. "You can't be serious," Melo noted with a smile, having a bit of a surprise by hearing this. "You have never cursed in your life?" "Yes, because it's unethical," Ida declared, continuing the robotic movements with his hands. "Oh boy, I'm gonna have a really hard time with you," the imp girl in a human disguise remarked sarcastically as her smile disappeared for a short amount of time, although telling it in a way that she didn't intend to hurt the ex-Sumi student with the words that exited her mouth. All the while Tokoyami and Uraraka, the conversation between them in shock, and Izuku witnessed the whole scene in complete silence, already having the information in his mind that it will be one hell of 3 years if the engine quirk user and his best imp friend were going to behave towards one another like that. Which was not about to change due to him knowing Melo and her personality too well. "Anyway, I think we should go now. We don't want to miss the train, don't we?" she said, morphing her previous smile back on her face. "Oh, right, we almost forgot about it," Izuku exclaimed. "Let's go everyone," he declared with a gleeful grin on his face as his fellow classmates who were present observed him, every one of them nodding their heads in response and thus agreeing to go along with him. And with this, the group, growing in size with Tokoyami also joining it, went on with their journey towards the gates of Japan's top-ranked hero academy, attempting to head in the direction of the nearest train station. Melo was about to accomplish this act as well, but out of nowhere, her phone that she kept in her right pocket suddenly buzzed, indicating that she had received a new message, causing her to stop in her steps and reach into her right pocket with her right hand, pulling her communication gadget out of it, which had a black phone case with the same symbol she acquired on her backpack as a sticker in the middle. Then, she pushed its button at the side, resulting in the screen lighting up. After that, she touched the icon of the app she needed with her left index finger, opening it and allowing herself to check who had sent her a message. And when she did this, the grin and the joyfulness she possessed disappeared instantly and got replaced with seriousness. All of this being thanks to the fact that the person who had sent the message to her in the first place was her boss, and the message she had received contained a location she had to go to meet up with him and her coworkers. As she observed the screen of her phone with a message on it, she was taken out of this current state of hers by Uraraka, who, after noticing that the disguised imp girl was not with them, turned around, opened her mouth, and exclaimed towards her, wishing to get her attention. "Are you coming, Hensushita?" The zero-gravity Quirk user questioned a bit away from Melo with a bright smile on her face as she looked at Melo, with her act being shared by the rest of the group as well, causing the first demonic friend of our young Cambion to lift her head up from her phone and set her eyes upon her in surprise. "You betcha," Melo replied gleefully, getting back to her previous delightful state and forming a smile on her face once again, putting her phone back inside her right pocket and running and joining to group. And at last, with the rejoining of the disguised imp girl, the group could start their journey towards the closest train station, wishing to catch the trains they needed to board in order to get back to their homes. During the way, the members went on chatting with each other, with Izuku talking mostly with Tokoyami about their special abilities and how similar they were to one another, making them get closer and resulting in them becoming friends, all the while Shadow continued to have a conversation with Dark Shadow as well, which consisted of the latter speaking and the former responding via sign language due to not being capable of talking, and Melo, Uraraka, and Ida discussing general stuff, with the imp Giddle in a human disguise dropping one or two swear during her speeches, causing the engine Quirk user to become a bit agitated each time she cursed. After a while, they finally reached the train station and entered it, walking to the area where the trains were standing. There, they said their farewells to each other, wishing a good day to one another and hoping to see each other the next day, with Melo waiting for everyone, including her best friend, to get into the vehicles they needed. Once every single member boarded the train needed in order to get back to the location of their home, the demeanor of the disguised imp girl shifted immediately, changing from happiness into seriousness, with her expression turning into a serious one as well, knowing what she had to next. Then, she proceeded to head towards the exit of the train station, stepping through it and getting out of the area. After this act, Melo began to walk in the direction of the location she was given by her boss in the message she received from him, getting more and more inside the city. She had been walking for around 30 minutes, passing by all kinds of people, when she reached a much less populated, developed area of the city, with most of the buildings possessing broken windows and boarded-up doors, signaling any person who passed by that it was not the safest place in the city. Then, went on with her walking until she got to the location she needed to go to, which was the beginning of a dark alleyway, entering it and going into it. And in the alleyway, the imp girl with a human disguise found the one she was looking for. Near an open dumpster made out of metal, her boss and her coworkers were located, about to fully finish one of their jobs by getting rid of the body of the corrupt hero they had just killed. And truth be told, they didn't appear to be human-like. They rather looked like Melo's true form, thus meaning that they were imps as well. The boss of the disguised imp girl was quite tall, but still a bit shorter than her, sporting a harlequin-like aesthetic. He had red skin with white marks on his body, similar to Melo's imp form, but he possessed those marks, which were brun marks to be exact, on parts of his forearms, chest, and tail, as well as on most of the right side of his face. He acquired red irises and a heart-shaped skull symbol on the center of his forehead. He obtained broad forearms and hands, and a long, narrow head with two large, curved, black and white striped horns extending out of it. He sported black spikes on his head, upper back, and tail, with his tail ending with a triangular point that had a black spot at the tip. He also possessed pointed feet with boot-like heels, with them occupying a bit of black coloration in some areas. His attire consisted of a tattered slate gray coat with red buttons down the breast, black knee-high boots matching the shape of his feet, and elbow-length black fingerless gloves featuring large, rounded yellow decorations on the upper side of them. As the last piece of his clothing, he was wearing a red skull charm around his neck, which was quite important to him. The two employees Melo's boss had beside her were quiet like her in appearance as well. The male imp worker, who was smaller than both Melo and his boss, obtained a red-colored skin with white freckles on his cheeks. He possessed white, pointy hair that led up to the curvy black and white horns he acquired on the top of his head. He also had yellow sclere with black slit pupils in his eyes. His tail was long and thin with a quadrilateral barb at the end, and he sported lanky digitigrade legs with cloven red hooves as well. He was wearing a navy black coat with red buttons and white cuffs, black pants, a white shirt that had a black turtleneck, a large bow tie, and fingerless gloves. Finally, the last member of the trio, who was the only female imp at present aside from the disguised imp girl and was as tall as her male co-worker, who was her loving husband, obtained red and white markings on her forearms and on her devilish tail. She had a pair of thin white striped black horns and short messy, bob-cut styled charcoal hair with bangs that covered half of her right horn. Her eyes sported yellow sclere and long thick black eyelashes, and with a small beauty mark under her right eye. She also acquired sharp, conical teeth, with the front ones having a gap between them, a black heart tattoo on her left shoulder, shimmering dark red eyeshadow, and black lipstick on her lips. Her attire was all black with a little yellow, consisting of a black choker around her neck, a cold-shoulder black crop top with the straps being held by two golden yellow buttons, black fingerless gloves, black torn denim pants, and tallis footwear, which exposed her hoof-like toes. As Melo continued to witness them, all three of them stopped what they were doing and raised their heads, setting their eyes upon her once they noticed her presence. "Melo, you're finally here." The boss of the imp girl with a human disguise greeted with a smile on his face as he approached his youngest employee. "Looks like you got my message just in time." "Mr. Blitz," Melo started, referring to the imp as Mr. Blitz, saying the Mr. due to formality. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked with a bit of anger in her voice. Doing a job done?" Blitzo quizzed with confusion. "Without human disguises?" the imp girl questioned with anger, freaking out by this fact. "What if someone sees you?" "Oh, don't worry about that, Melo. We've got that covered," the head of imp assured. "No one's gonna notice us." "Yeah, because I always clean the mess up, sir," the short male imp declared as he yanked the dead hero's body into the dumpster, proceeding to jump up and down on it, trying to get it inside the dumpster as much as he could. "Sup, Moxie?" the disguised imp girl welcomed as she waved at the imp with her right hand, referring to him as Moxie. "Hello, Melo," Moxie greeted as he continued to jump on the body of the deceased hero. "Shut up, Mox, and do your fucking job," Blitzo demanded as he turned his head and looked at his employee. "I'm just doing that, sir," Moxie replied as he got the dead hero's body inside the metal dumpster completely, closing its door and leaping off of it in the process. "Anyway, how's your little infiltration mission going? Have you managed to take out our big shot yet?" The employer of the teenager imp girl wondered. Fuck, he had such an ass name. Muscle Man? Blonde Power? What the fuck was it? He listed as he tried to remember back to the target's name. "It's All Might, sir. His name is All Might," Moxie declared, reminding his boss of the name of their #1 target. "I was about to say that, Mox," the founder of Immediate Murder Professionals announced angrily. "So yeah, All Might. Have you already killed him?" he inquired from the imp girl, obtaining a grin on his face in the process. This was the real reason why Melo was at the #1 ranked hero academy in the country. Although she indeed wanted to experience human life, the main cause of her being on Earth was to end the life of the #1 hero of Japan and the symbol of peace, All Might. Because of this, she had to keep this fact secret from everyone who was not her boss and her coworkers, including her best friend and her own mother. Heck, she couldn't even tell her mother what kind of job she was doing. She had lied to her that she was working in an office as a staff assistant for 6 hours all this time. And she knew that if her first ever friend and/or her mother found out about her true job, they would be really sad and disappointed. But she couldn't bear watching her loving mother work herself to death just to earn enough money to pay the bills and the rent. So, the imp girl decided to look for a job to aid her mother. That was when she crossed roads with the advertisement of Imp on the goggle, resulting in her going to Imp City by bus and paying a visit to the boss of the company. And although Blitzo was really against the idea of letting a minor work at a company that was about killing specific human targets given by sinners on Earth, Melo could convince him to let her do office work alongside his adoptive daughter, Luna, who was a female hellhound, and to occasionally go with them on missions on the realm of the living. Heck, she killed 1 or 2 villains and other bad people during her job, just like in the case of the corrupt record keeper, whose computer she used after she eliminated to make herself a fake profile, which concluded a fake birth certificate and everything else as well, in order to get into human society without notice. But she didn't give a shit about it. She didn't care how much killing humans traumatized her. As long as her female mother didn't work herself to the brink of death, she was fine going alongside it. Not even killing a symbol of peace for a large amount of money, which was promised by a sinner, couldn't stop her. "Well, not yet, but I'll manage," Melo responded with a tired tone. "Great," Blitzo exclaimed happily. "Just keep it low and you'll finish the job in no time," he remarked, then turned around, pulled his phone out of his right pocket, and dialed a number, putting his phone to the place he acquired his ear. "Luna Tilda, we're ready to go home, dear," he declared with a delightful tone as he further away from the imp girl with a human disguise. All the while the female imp approached her in the process. "Is everything all right, honey?" the female imp inquired with a southern accent as she arrived next to the teenager imp girl. "Yes, Millie, I'm fine," the disguised imp girl assured, referring to her female colleague as Millie. "I'm just tired, that's all." "Are you sure?" Millie queried with worry, anxious for the imp girl's mental state. "You know you can tell me everything, right?" "I know, Millie," Melo answered, "but I'm fine, really," she reassured, then continued, "I just want to go home." "All right," Millie replied, still possessing her worry for Melo. "Just tell me if you have a problem, okay?" she requested. "Okay," Melo answered as she formed a smile on her face, which was shared by her female colleague. As Melo obtained her smile on her face, a portal suddenly opened in the middle of the alleyway, leading back to hell, with the other side of it showing an office room, with the only living individual there being Luna, the hellhound of the group and the adoptive daughter of Blitzo, holding a grimoire in her hands, having her casual bored and uncaring expression on her face as she witnessed the group. "All right, everyone, let's get inside," Blitzo ordered as he threw the portal, landing next to his precious daughter. "We're common, Blitz," Millie said joyfully. Then both she and Melo proceeded to walk up to the portal, where the former's husband was already waiting for them. Once they reached it, Moxie lent a hand to his loving wife, offering a chance for her to help her cross the gate between the realm of suffering and the mortal realm, with Millie gladly accepting his assistance, thus getting through the portal together. Then, as the last member who was on the other side of the portal, Melo stepped through it as well, doing it just in time before the portal closed, changing back into her true imp form after she accomplished this act, all the while hoping that her secret will never reach the surface and the rest of the school year will go just as smoothly as the first day. It was a normal, peaceful morning in the realm of suffering, if we could call it peaceful by any means. The sinners and demons of the capital of hell were already awake and were doing their usual stuff, such as murder, robbery, DRG dealing and trafficking, battling with each other in turf wars, sexual business, cannibalism, and so much more. Our young overlord was no different, although the activity he performed was much less violent and more serene. In the Hazbin Hotel, inside his own hotel room, Izuku Midoriya, the 14-year-old teenager, who was the son of the radio demon and one of the newest students of the top hero academy of his country, was foundable, lying in his bed and sleeping in peace, having been wandering in the realm of dreams for hours in order to take a rest and prepare his body for the next day. But unfortunately, this calm sleep of his was about to end. As the alarm he set up in his phone to help him wake up in time, our young overlord awoke from his slumber, slowly opening his visionary organs and regaining consciousness. After he fully opened his eyes, Izuku sat up in his bed and pressed the alarm on his communication device, turning it off completely, then moved his hands to his eyes and rubbed them, attempting to take the sleepiness out of them. Once he completed this act, he proceeded to look around the location he was, not knowing why he was in his hotel room for a short moment. But as he did this, his memories began to flood his mind like a tidal wave, reminding him why he was in the fiery pits of hell in the first place. After the first day of high school ended and he arrived back at the apartment he and his loving mother lived in, he was informed by his female parent that he had received a letter from his father, which quite surprised him. So, once his mother gave the letter to him, our dear hero opened it and started to read it, wishing to know why his father sent him a letter and what it contained. And when he accomplished this activity, he was even more taken aback than before. In the letter, his father asked him to lend a hand in the making of a TV commercial about the hotel that Charlie and Vaggie requested him to do, wanting him to aid him in the production of the advertisement as the cameraman. This request from his demonic parent really surprised our protagonist and made him find it a bit strange that his father wanted him to be the cameraman for the commercial. But due to him being the kind, nice teenager boy he was, he decided to fulfill the request of his father. Taking his yellow backpack off of his back and placing it on his chair once he was in his room, changing his attire from his high school uniform to the clothes his father gifted him 10 years ago, although it was in a larger size to match his current posture. Opening a portal between the mortal realm and realm of suffering, and stepping into it, all the while Shadow accompanied him, with him turning into his shadow form when his master entered the portal. Once he was in hell and met up with everyone in the Hazbin Hotel who were in the lobby area, including his demonic relatives as well. To his surprise, Razzle and Dazzle were there too, and greeted our protagonist with joy, with them being there since an earlier time of the day and planning to stay there from that day on, as the Princess of Hell explained to him, surprising him with this statement. After this exchange between them, the demonic parent of our dear hero approached and explained that he needed our young Cambion's assistance due to him not understanding how modern technology after his death worked, and also absolutely hating that technology, thus making Izuku understand why his father wished him to help. With him not knowing that another reason for his father asking for his aid was that he wished to spend a little bit more quality time with him and strengthen their father-son relationship even more. Hearing his explanation, he happily aided his demonic parent in this task, causing his father to become as jovial as usual after he heard his reply and made both him and our young overlord start the production right away. But when he found out what direction his father intended to go in the creation of the television advertisement about the hotel, he became quite shocked and was not fond of the direction of the advertisement. He thought that the advertisement didn't show what was the main point of the hotel and thought it didn't match Charlie's vision, thus saddening her, which he even expressed to his father in a polite way in order to anger or upset him. Of course, Izuku knew what his father's opinion was on the hotel, and he knew that he wanted it to fail miserably, but he thought this was a tiny bit too much. But despite this, his father didn't listen to our protagonist, not because he didn't care about his opinion, but because of the amount of fun he experienced during the making of the advertisement. Heck, he even covered his son's eyes with a pair of small tentacles at a point in the filming of the commercial, which was mostly due to not desiring to traumatize him with the sight that was being filmed at that moment. Regardless, he and his son still continued to do the commercial in the way the former wished to, causing our young Cambion to become a bit nervous, fearing that his royal friend and her girlfriend wouldn't like it one bit, and it might upset them. After they finished filming, Izuku helped his father with the other parts of creating the advertisement, such as trimming most of the video footage and audio, this action being due to his father desiring to try this act out himself, not wanting him to witness the scene that was meant to be the opening scene for the advertisement, and putting in fancy subtitles at some parts where his father asked to. By the time they completed the making of every aspect of the commercial, it was already nighttime, resulting in his father advising Izuku to stay for the night, which advice our young overlord gladly took, going into his room in the hotel, taking his clothes off, having a shower, changing into his pajamas, getting into his bed, and falling asleep, with this being the reason why he was in his room at that morning. As our protagonist remembered back all of these activities, he opened his mouth and released a tired sigh, still not being sure about the commercial and being afraid of his royal friends and her loving girlfriend's reaction to it. Then, he got out of his bed, took a quick shower, dressed up in the clothes he usually wore when he visited his father, sat down at his desk, and consumed the meal that his aunt always prepared for him and brought into his room while he was asleep, performing his casual morning routine with these acts. All the while his shadowy companion came out of his hideout and observed him in the process. Once he finished his breakfast, leaving the tray that had the dish positioned on it on his desk, our dear hero stood up from his chair, grabbed the voodoo book he had and used to enter the realm of suffering with his left hand, walked up to the door of his room, grabbed its handle with his right hand, pushed it downwards, unlocked the door, and with Shadow by his side, he stepped out of his room, closing the door behind his back after both he and his shadowy friend exited the room. Then, he turned his body in the direction of the lobby and began to walk towards it, thinking that his demonic family members, friends, and inventor teacher would be there. After 1 or 2 minutes of walking, Izuku finally reached the lobby, looking inside and earning a glimpse of the situation that was unfolding there, and when he did this, his assumption about every single resident of the rehabilitation center being in the parlor was almost 100% correct. Aside from his demonic teacher, who was probably in his airship and was possibly in the middle of building some kind of new weapon or machinery that he wished to show him, everyone was present in the lobby, doing their casual activities. The anthropomorphic cat demon, who was the bartender of the hotel and was the uncle of our protagonist, was standing behind the bar counter of the caviar bar, holding a bottle that probably contained some kind of alcoholic beverage in his left and a red handkerchief in his right hand, cleaning the bottle with it, while Niffty, the aunt of our young Cambion, was near the bar counter and was having her duster in her right hand, wiping the dust away from any furniture that acquired it. Meanwhile, at the other side of the lobby, at the parlor area, the radio demon, Princess Charlotte, Vaggie, and Angeldust were foundable, with Kiki and Fat Nuggets, the 2 pets of the hotel, being present there as well. The father of our young overlord was standing at the left side of the old-fashioned television, facing the Princess of Hell and her partner, both of them sitting on a sofa next to each other. All the while the one-eyed demonic cat pet was sitting at the left side of the furniture. As for Angel, the gay porn star was laying on another sofa, with a beer bottle positioned in front of it, and his demonic pig pet resting on the floor near the beer bottle. Once he fully observed his surroundings and saw everyone being in the lobby, Izuku moved his legs forward and stepped into the room, with Shadow floating after him in the process, making everyone turn their heads and set their eyes upon him, most of them performing this act with a smile, with the only exception who didn't form a grin on his face being Husk, but happy to witness his nephew nonetheless, with his father and the one-eyed demonic cat even moving away from their location and starting to approach him, with the latter flying to him, landing on his left shoulder, and beginning to nuzzle to his left cheek. "My dear boy," Alastor greeted with his well-known toothy grin as he approached his son, holding his red-colored vintage microphone in his left hand. "It is so delightful to see you once again," he stated as joyfully as usual, then continued his speech. "Did you have a refreshing sleep?" "I hope you had," he inquired gleefully. "Yes, Dad, I slept well," Izuku answered as Kiki snuggled to his face and let out her gentle and calming purring, which he appreciated, ensuring his demonic parent that he was well rested and he was ready for the day. "Wonderful," the cannibalistic serial killer said in joy, happy to hear that he could rest peacefully without any nightmares. "We have been waiting for you," he declared, taking his only child with his statement. "Really?" our protagonist wondered in a mixture of surprise and confusion. "Of course, I would never want my dear boy to miss the presentation of our excellent commercial," the radio demon announced, shocking his son with this reveal, causing him to become a little bit anxious when realized he and his father were going to present the commercial they made to his royal friend and her girlfriend, still possessing his fear towards the thought they might not like the advertisement. "Now, come my boy, let's show what a magnificent advertisement we created," he stated with his iconic grin, then turned his body around and moved his legs, proceeding to approach the old-fashioned television. "Okay," Izuku responded a tiny bit anxiously, still not sure what the reaction of Charlie and Vaggie would be if they saw the commercial. Then, he decided to follow his father in his tracks, walking up to the vintage TV and attempting to place himself on the right side of the television, with his father taking his original location on the other side of the TV and the demonic pet cat to get off of his left shoulder and float back to her original position. "Hi, Charlie. Hi, Miss Vaggie," Izuku greeted as he positioned himself next to the old-fashioned television, raising his right hand a bit and waving at the ones who were sitting on the furniture in front of him with it. Saying hi to his friend and her loving partner with a smile on his face, which he morphed to showcase his happiness for seeing them again and to hide his nervousness from them, all the while his shadowy helper placed his pitch-black body at his master's right side. "Hi, Izuku," Charlie said with a gleeful smile and attitude, being genuinely joyful for seeing her young Cambion friend. "Hello, Izuku," Vaggie welcomed, greeting the youngest person in the hotel with her own smile. After this conversation ended between the eye-patched female demon and our dear hero, the radio-loving overlord attempted to open his mouth full of yellow-colored, sharp, pointy teeth, beginning to speak and getting the attention of the group. "Now, let us begin, shall we?" Alastor announced with his well-known smile, then moved his right hand in the direction of the vintage TV, grabbed its button, and rotated it to the left, turning on the television and starting the commercial he and his son made the previous day. At first, the only thing that was seen on the screen of the TV was just red-colored static, giving off its usual, bit annoying white noise. But shortly after the static appeared, the screen slowly began to become more and more clearer, offering a better sight for everyone with each passing second. And after a few more moments later, the static disappeared completely, allowing everyone who was present near the television to observe the screen and the footage on it. The first scene was quite ordinary, for a normal sinner at least. The scene showcased a male sinner with a kind of generic demonic look, which consisted of a pair of horns on the top of his head, red skin, a pair of bat-like wings on his back, brown hair, and a short brown beard, with the only attire he possessed being a black collar with metal spikes around his neck and ripped short jeans, stabbing another sinful soul with a knife, doing all of this with glee and happiness. Of course, this act and starting really took aback the trio, especially Izuku, who just at the screen in shock, not understanding how did he not know about this footage, not having any knowledge of the fact that this was the part when his father covered his eyes with a pair of tentacles. All the while the worry he obtained had risen, causing him to flatten his ears and tail a bit and him thinking that the advertisement wouldn't never earn the likeness of the Princess of Hell and her girlfriend, which, if it happened, wouldn't have surprised him. As he witnessed the footage emitted by the vintage TV, his father suddenly started to speak on the recording, making him get out of his shock state and focus his full attention on the commercial once again. "Well, hello there, you wayward sinner," the radio demon greeted with a joyful tone in his voice as the camera focused on the sinner, absolutely not fazed by the act that was unfolding in front of him, causing the demon to stop his stabbing and look up, setting his eyes upon him. "Do you like blood, violence, depravity, and a sexual nature?" he questioned as he pointed at the sinner, with his hand appearing a little bit on the recording, causing the footage to glitch out a little bit. All the while the other demon who was attacked by the male sinner rose up and looked at the cannibalistic serial killer, seemingly unaffected by the damage he was inflicted upon by his attacker. "Of course you do. That's why you're in hell," Alastor declared as joyfully as ever while the camera zoomed out, which act was handled by another tentacle due to Izuku not seeing a thing when this scene was filmed, revealing an almost fully destroyed city area, possessing almost completely wrecked and obliterated building that in the brink of collapsing due to what condition they were in. "But what would you say if I told there's a place that had none of that?" he asked from the two demons as more and more sinners came out from the endless amounts of rubble, all of them acquiring unique appearances. After the radio-loving overlord said this in the recording, the screen suddenly became static once again, shifting to another scene that showed the upper part of the hotel, showing off its huge name on the top. "Welcome to the HazbinHotel, a misguided path to redemption," the radio demon announced as the camera moved down, stopping at the part where it showed the main entrance of the hotel, founded nearly a year ago by Lucifer's delusional daughter and the Princess of Hell, Charliemorningstar, he stated as the scene on the footage changed once again, present Charlie talking to someone who was not visible on the screen, with Princess Charlotte turning her head and placing her attention on the camera, waving at it with her left hand and with a nervous smile on her face. with Angel also coming into the view and photobombing the scene, making bunny ears gestures with all 4 of his hands and positioning them behind Charlie, with his upper hands being located behind her head and his lower hands being placed behind her shoulders. Come place your fate in her inexperienced hands as she tries to work through her daddy issues by fixing you, the cannibalistic serial killer said as the screen showcased a bit of Princess Charlotte's interview with Katie Killjoy, which Izuku knew that it didn't end well, with him having this piece of information due to his royal friend telling him about it in the past. Then a picture of Charlie staring at a board with drawings on it, with this picture followed by a picture that showed the Princess of Hell being at the edge of crying as she moved her head away from her father, who was showing his back to her, with the third and last picture being one that demonstrated Charlie showing a presentation to a few sinners, obtaining a nervous smile in the process. Here we offer fun things, Alastor declared as the screen showed the lobby area of the hotel, with Razzle and Dazzle being presented on the recording as well, cleaning the room brooms and dusters, and a subtitle saying fun things with large yellowish, orangish letters appearing at the lower part of the screen, such as somewhat functional staff, he stated as the focus of the camera shifted to the caviar bar and at our young overlord's uncle, who collapsed on the bar counter at the moment the recording device zoomed in on him. And 24-hour pest control, the radio demon said as the ant of our protagonist climbed up on the bar counter and began to chase a bug with an abnormally large needle, desiring to kill the creature. All the while the word pest control came into existence at the upper part of the screen. Custom rooms, and just look at this tacky parlor, the radio-loving overlord said in the recording as the screen presented a toilet. Then the parlor area of the hotel, showing Kiki, Angel, and Sirpentious there, with the most former flying away in fright as a plank almost fell on her. And enjoy riveting conversations with our 2 residents. Wow, he declared as the camera focused on the spider-based male sinner and snake-like male demon, with the former looking up from his phone and showing a middle finger off to Alastor with his right lower hand, who was not visible on the screen, and with the latter looking into the recording device with a smile full of pride, with the whole screen getting occupied by a spinning WoW subtitle at the end. All this and more at the Hazbin Hotel, the radio demon stated as the WoW word vanished, allowing the watchers to observe a drawing of the hotel, which was decorated with stickers and with smiley faces that had sharp teeth, possibly drawn by him, on the screen. Your last desperate attempt at salvation starts here, the cannibalistic serial killer announced as the footage showed the upper part of the hotel from outside, with its name on the top, and with subtitles that said call now, or don't. I don't care, we still don't have a working phone, came into being at the bottom of the screen. And with this, the commercial came to an end, causing the radio-loving overlord to move his right hand and grab its button, turning it to the left and deactivating the old-fashioned television. So, what do you think? Alastor inquired as he removed his right hand from the button and set his eyes upon Charlie and Vaggie with his iconic grin, with his son doing the same act, although not possessing a smile at all. Instead, he acquired fully lowered ears and tail as his nervosity reached its peak, being anxious for the opinions of the Princess of Hell and her girlfriend, who witnessed the now turned-off TV in shock for a short amount of time in silence, with the latter being the one who broke the quietness not long after the advertisement had ended. "I'm sorry, what the fuck was that?" Vaggie questioned in anger, referring to the commercial, proving her and her girlfriend's young friend's assumption. "Ah, yeah, one note," Charlie started as she held up her right hand and right index finger. "Alastor, she said, then continued. "First off, thank you so much for making this, seriously, amazing," she remercied, grateful for him making this advertisement. "But, don't you think the tone is a bit off?" Princess Charlotte asked politely, not wanting to harm the radio demon with her word, which was unsuccessful unfortunately, with the cannibalistic serial killer adopting a tiny bit wider grin that signaled a small amount of anger and annoyance, which his son recognized in an instant. "We want people to want to come here. This makes it look, she said, then stopped in her speech, looking for the perfect word that could both describe the commercial and wouldn't harm the feelings of the co-owner and the hotel manager of her hotel. "Bad. The word you're looking for is bad," Vaggie said with an angry tone, finishing her girlfriend's sentence with a word that Charlie wouldn't have used, not impressed by the advertisement at all. "Funny, I was going for hilarious," the radio demon remarked joyfully, acquiring his well-known wide smile on his face in the process. It didn't explain anything about how we're trying to save demons from extermination, which is the whole fucking point. The moth-based demon stated in fury as she looked at Alastor with frustration, then turned her head and looked at the son of the radio demon. Focusing her attention on him, Izuku, why didn't you tell him that the commercial he was making was shit? She questioned in anger, which was not directed at Izuku. Well, I tried to tell my dad to change a few things to make it more accurate and less offensive, but he didn't listen to me. Izuku explained nervously, not being angry at his father for that action. I'm so sorry the commercial turned out like this, he apologized, feeling bad for the commercial ending up like this, saying it in a way that he didn't intend to hurt his father's feeling by saying this about the advertisement, which, fortunately, didn't happen. It's not a problem, Izuku, Princess Charlotte assured with a small smile on her face, wishing to calm down her friend and let him know that she was not angry at him, with her partner adopting the same smile as her. Then she placed her attention back on her friend's father. But Vaggie's right, Alastor, she declared, standing by her girlfriend's statement. The commercial was to let sinners know we are trying to help them, she clarified to the radio-loving overlord, obtaining a smile on her face in the process. Well, my dear, I have been active in hell again for only almost a year now, and everyone presumably knows about this little establishment of ours from the radio show my dear sweet boy recommended to hold a few months ago. The proper media to express oneself. The cannibalistic serial killer announced as he moved away from the television to the left and spun his microphone in his hands behind his back, referring back to the radio show Izuku suggested and to the time he disappeared from the radar of every demon in hell. That's right. Alastor, the radio demon, who toppled and ended the reign of overlords who had been dominant for centuries when he arrived at the realm of suffering, suddenly vanished for 10 whole years after the extermination day that occurred 1 week before it should have, only getting out of his residence and stepping out to the streets of Pentagram when he and his son paid a visit to Melo and her mother, Miss Rosie, or Miss Mimsy, and becoming active once again when he came to the hotel and offered his help to run it. No one in hell knew where he went or what he was doing during that time. Some said that he vanished from the public eye just because he got scared from the brought forward extermination day, while others thought that he disappeared to become stronger in order to defeat his rival once and for all. But our young overlord knew the truth behind his disappearance, with his aunt, his uncle, Miss Rosie, and Miss Mimsy also possessing that piece of information. As far as Izuku was concerned, his demonic parent vanished from the sights of the demons of hell to allow him to spend much more with him, wanting to form a much closer father-son relationship with him, not knowing that there were other reasons for his father's disappearance that neither he nor his demonic family members, Miss Rosie and Miss Mimsy, were aware of, such as the fact all the radio shows his demonic parent broadcasted through the radio during the 10 years were only hearable for Izuku, wanting him to not find anything out of the ordinary, causing the radio-loving overlord feeling bad for the fact that he didn't and couldn't tell everything to his son. As our protagonist thought about those 7 years, his father continued his speech, causing him to get out of this phase of his and place his attention on him. But yet you insisted on this noisy picture box advertisement, Alastor said with slight anger as he walked back to the old-fashioned television, positioned the upper part of his mic on the top of the TV, and pointed at the television with it, feeling genuine disgust towards it. So, I decided to have a little fun with it, he added as he removed his microphone from the surface of the vintage TV and threw it into his other hand, witnessing it with his red eyes in the meantime. Oh, fun? You had a little fun with it? Vaggie demanded with frustration in her voice, rising from her seat and standing on the sofa. Well, this is not what we want to represent, she stated, then went on with her speech. When you showed up here more than 10 months ago, you promised you would help us run this. Instead you're mocking us. The loving girlfriend of the Princess of Hell expressed angrily. Nobody's going to want to come to a place that a powerful overlord like you think is a waste of time, she declared as she sat back on the sofa and observed the radio demon, who listened to her rant in silence. As she finished her speech, the most famous gay porn star of hell slowly raised his upper right arm, signaling the others that he wanted to say something, making everyone at the parlor, including Shadow, Kiki, and Fat Nuggets, set their eyes upon, with the moth-based female demon being the one who began to speak by seeing the hotel's first guest's action. What? Vaggie queried from the spider-like sinner agitatedly. If in ya filmin' a commercial, I'd suggest taking advantage of the celebrity you have right here, Angel suggested with a smirk as he sat up on the sofa, picked up his beer bottle from the floor with his left lower hand, and pointed at himself with his 3 remaining hands, referring to himself as the celebrity. Angel, you're a porn star, the girlfriend of Princess Charlotte noted. A famous pawn star, the gay pawn star corrected. I'll have the horniest sinners get these walls down to get in, he expressed as he continued to witness Vaggie. We're not doing a porn as a commercial, Vaggie declared with more anger than the moment prior, fully against Angel's idea. Why not? Sega sells, don't it? Angel pleaded, having the same smirk from before. I swear, if you film me going at it with Mr. Fancy Talk creepy voice here, you'd be rollin' in participants willin' to come and stay at this tacky hotel, he stated as he pointed at the radio-loving overlord, who, in the meantime, teleported next to his only child, making Shadow float to the other side of his master, placing himself at his left side and above the vintage television. All the while Izuku just rolled his eyes at the spider-based sinner's statement, being used to the flirtatious speaking style Angel performed towards his father and uncle. Ha ha, Alastor laughed. Never going to happen, he declared with his smile dropping a tiny bit in disgust, completely against the mere idea of him having sexual intercourse with the gay porn star. Angel, I appreciate you want to help the hotel by using your special skills to, attract folks to the hotel, but the Princess of Hell said, making everyone, even the 2 pets and the shadowy companion of her young Cambion friend, to set their eyes upon her. I don't want to exploit you in that way, she expressed, not wishing to use Angel as a tool to accomplish getting more residents to her rehabilitation center. Oh, please, baby. The spider-like demon started, then continued. This body was made to be exploited, he stated in a flirty tone, fixing his large, signature fluff in the process. I got the arms, I got the stamina, I got the legs, I got the lung capacity. Oh, I got the legs, he listed with enthusiasm. The gang reflex, the holes, the chest fluff everyone thinks are tits. Hell's most famous gay adult film star went on with his listing, as the others went on listening to what he said, with Charlie laughing a bit in discomfort and the other members of the group also acquiring the same discomfort. However, this moment was interrupted when out of nowhere, the mobile phone of Princess Charlotte, which was positioned on her right side, began to ring, letting out its ringtone that sounded like a trumpet letting out a nice little melody, causing the Princess of Hell and her youngest friend to look in the direction of the communication device, with the former extending her hand towards it and picking it up, becoming extremely shocked when she saw that it was her father who was calling her, which shock quickly transformed into nervousness, with these 2 feelings being noticed by our dear hero as well. Ooh, Angel, please, hold that thought, Charlie requested from Angel as she observed the screen of her phone that showed her father's nickname, which was Dad of course, and his profile, which was none other than a rubber duck that had a top hat, red cheeks, and bow tie similarly to him. I'll be right back, she stated as she ascended from the sofa, beginning to walk in the direction of the nearest hallway. I could keep going all night, baby, Angel remarked to Charlie as she walked away from the group and entered one of the hallways, obtaining an expression full of nervosity and desiring to get a certain amount of distance from them where they and no one else could hear her conversation with her father. All the while her young overlord friend witnessed her in this act, thinking that she might have become that nervous due to the one who was calling her, not knowing that it was actually her male parent who was calling her. Then, after she got enough distance, she released a deep sigh and answered her father's call, beginning her conversation with her father. Once the Princess of Hell left the lobby area of the hotel, the gay porn star shifted his attention from her, looking at the moth-based female demon instead. Hey, I have a question, Angel said. If Freaky Face over there is so powerful, why can't just make people stay here? He wondered, looking at the cannibalistic serial killer as he asked this, with Vaggie, Izuku, Shadow, and the 2 pets of the hotel setting their visionary organs upon him as well. Oh, trust me, I can, Alastor assured evilly as his antlers grew in size a tiny bit and his voice became a bit distorted, clenching his left hand into a fist in the process. And what about ya, Toots? The spider-based male sinner inquired from our protagonist as he focused his attention on him, with the others in the parlor also sharing the same activity he was performing. with the father of our young Cambion changing back to his original form. I mean, you're the son of the effing radio demon. You're probably as strong as him. I'm sure could at least get a few fuckers here with your powers if you revealed yourself, he stated, referring to the fact that aside from the residents of the Hazbin Hotel, not a single demon knew about his existence. Well, to be honest, I never really wanted to use my powers on others just to make them do something they don't want to do. It's just. Our dear hero confessed, scratching the back of his head with his right hand as he said this. Besides, I'm not nearly as strong as my dad. Heck, I don't think I'll ever become as strong as him, he stated, now hurting his father with his words by describing himself as weak. Oh, my dear boy, do not say such a thing, the radio demon said. You're too harsh with yourself, he remarked as he put his microphone into his right hand and positioned his left hand on his son's right shoulder on an assuring manner. I'm certain that one day you will become as powerful as I am, perhaps even stronger, the radio-loving overlord ensured, causing his son to smile at his statement. Thank you, Dad, Izuku remercied smilingly, being grateful for his father's support and his belief in him. I envy you, kid, Husk declared as he stopped in cleaning the bottle for a moment, causing everyone in the lobby to set their eyes upon him in surprise. I wish your asshole of a father was like you, he remarked with his usual grumpy tone. But instead, I'm stuck here with these fuggers and I need to listen to their bitchin' all the time. The gambling-addicted feline demon complained, not including his nephew as a fucker, and continuing his work after he ended his speech. I like being forced, Niffty announced, revealing her location behind the bar counter, right on the left side of our protagonist's uncle. Keep that to yourself, Niff, the anthropomorphic cat sinner with disgust in his voice as the aunt of our young Cambion hid behind the counter, forming a grin on her face in the process. What, you don't love being here with me, Whiskers? Angel teased, making Husk adopt a tiny blush on his face. Call me Whiskers again and I'll jam that bottle right down your throat, Husk warned grumpily, putting the red handkerchief down and moving the top of the bottle near to his mouth, ready to remove its cap and begin to drink the alcoholic beverage inside it. Kinky, the gay pawn star remarked in a seductive tone. Come on, keep talking dirty, he requested in a flirty voice, urging the alcohol-loving cat sinner to continue his speech. Ugh, the moth-like female demon groaned in tiredness. Angel, let Husk do his job, and no, we can't force sinners to come here. They need to choose to. I'm choosing to be here, and I think it's all stupid, Angel expressed with brutal honesty. We're in hell, toots, he announced, then continued. That's kind of the point, ain't it? The spider-like demon quizzed, seemingly not giving a shit about the hotel's cause. But what if it's not? Izuku started, making both the famous gay porn star and the eye-patched female sinner look at him. I mean, how do we know there's no redemption if we didn't try it even once? He pointed out, showing his further support to and belief in the hotel with this one sentence. Izuku's right, the moth-like female demon said, sharing the opinion of our protagonist. Just because nobody has made it out before it doesn't that it impossible, she said, crossing her arms as she finished her sentence. Hey, whatever means I can keep Creation here rent-free, Angel said as he leaned forward and placed his upper left hand on Vaggie's right shoulder, resulting in her lowering her arms and obtaining a tired expression after he told this statement. Crack is expensive, he noted bluntly. Vaggie, Izuku, holy shit, Charlie exclaimed in pure excitement, being absolutely above cloud 9. Ah, what? Vaggie startled, causing both her and Izuku to turn their heads in the direction of Princess in total surprise, not knowing what she wanted to say. Get over here. The Princess of Hell squeezed through her teeth in excitement as she moved her hand towards her body in a way that signaled the two people she called the name out of to go to her location, indicating that she wanted to reveal something really important to them. Seeing this activity of hers, both Vaggie and Izuku adopted a smile on their faces and began to approach the hallway Charlie was foundable, with Shadow following his master by levitating after him. After they got to the start of the hallway, the trio entered it and walked up to Charlie, with the moth-like female demon being the first to speak. What's going on? The girlfriend of Princess Charlotte queried with traces of worry as she crossed her arms, all the while Charlie hopped up and down in pure enthusiasm, which action Izuku witnessed with the same smile that he obtained on his face a few seconds ago. being relieved to see his royal friend that happy. Once they reached her, the Princess of Hell took a deep breath to gather her thoughts and calm herself down as much as she could, opening her mouth and starting to speak. "My dad just called," Charlie started. "He said that the leader of the angel army wants to meet," she stated, then went on with her speech. "He asked me if I could go instead," Princess Charlotte announced in a fast and excited speaking style as grabbed the shoulders of her girlfriend with her hands, still obtaining her enthusiasm, shocking both her partner and her young overlord friend with her reveal, especially Izuku, who flattened his ears and tail, and acquired fear at the mere moment the angels were mentioned. But the extermination was just a few months ago. Izuku reminded his friend stammeringly as the haunting memories about the incident in which he and Melo almost lost their lives began to flood his mind, making the rest of the main cast, aside from the notable Kingpin, who was not present at that moment, to look at the group and resulting in his father, aunt, and uncle to worry for him and his mental state. What do they want and now? He wondered stutterly, asking the same questions the moth-based female demon would have asked. Despite his easily noticeable fear, the royal friend of our dear hero didn't notice it. Not because she didn't care about it, of course not. It was due to the fact she finally had a chance to discuss her plan with a holy person whom she imagined she could convince to support her lifelong dream. And because of this, she couldn't resist expressing her joy by doing her favorite hobby, singing "Turn on Happy Day in Hell if you want. I can do this. Somehow I know it. I'll get heaven behind my plans," Princess Charlotte sang with a bright and hopeful smile as she observed the light shining through the windows of the lobby. "Charlie, hold on," Vaggie requested as she tried to reach out to her girlfriend with her left hand, but was unsuccessful. "There's just no way. I can blow it. Now this once in a lifetime chance," she said in her singing as she moved inside the lobby once again, all the while the others witnessed her in this act. "It's just a meeting," the partner of the Princess of Hell noted, which remark was ignored completely by her girlfriend, who continued singing her song. "To change their minds and touch their hearts, or whatever angels have," Charlie sang, being filled with hope and smiling in the process. "This could be bad," Vaggie remarked with a bit of negativity, making her girlfriend turn around in surprise after she heard her comment. "Cheer up, Vaggie. This could be swell," Princess Charlotte expressed in her singing as she walked up to her loving partner and grabbed both of her hands, causing her to form a sweet smile on her face. "Something tells me that this could be a happy day in hell," she sang happily, going into a spin with her girlfriend, taking her aback and dazing her a little bit with this act of hers. Then, after a few spins, Charlie released her grip on her girlfriend and headed towards the entrance of her hotel that served as its exit as well, touched its handle, pushed it downwards, unlocked the door, and exited the rehabilitation center, entering the streets of Pentagram City and continuing her singing there, causing the cannibalistic serial killer, the gay pawn star, the cockroach female sinner, the hellish pet pig, and the one-eyed demon cat to approach the door and witness her in this activity, with the pig doing this by following his owner and the feline performing this act by flying to the needed location. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 8. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author MaxX69 on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.